If your paycheck arrived today, would every dollar know where to go? If your paycheck arrived today, would every dollar know where to go? Would some dollar already know I'm paying for rent, or I'm paying for groceries, or I'm paying down a debt, or I'm being invested for the future? Or would the money arrive, get spent, and at the end of the month, you ask, where did my money go? What if we changed that question? Instead of asking, where did my money go? Let's decide, where do I want my money to go? Where do I want my money to go? Today we are talking about giving every dollar an assignment. Giving every dollar an assignment. Hello, stewards, and welcome back to another episode of Bolts and Nuts of Financial Wellness. I am Ruth Kirago, and as always, thank you for joining me on this journey. This is where we learn together, we build together, and become better stewards of what has been entrusted to us. Last week, we created our money blueprint. Remember that? In episode 6, make sure you watch that episode. We said that a money blueprint has a vision, priorities, plan, and execution. And today we are going to move into a practical part. Once I know where my life is going, or once I know what my vision is, I have to answer another question. What does each dollar need to help me get there? And today's principle is simple. Give every dollar an assignment. Give every dollar an assignment. And our word today, Luke chapter 14, verse 28, and this is what it says. For which of you, intended to build a tower, does not sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? The useful principle here is, before undertaking something significant, understand what it will require. For a long time, I wrote my budget every month and compared it, the planned versus the actual. There's a time about 3 years ago that I was very good at this, and I would do this repeatedly. And after doing it repeatedly, I knew the usual numbers: the rent, electricity, food, phone, internet, insurance. Then my season changed. I moved from North Carolina, came to Washington State, and I moved into a studio. And in that studio, I still kept budgeting. I had a paper budget and I would budget every month. And because of that reputation of knowing, looking at the numbers, I already knew what's going out. I already knew what I'm paying for, what each dollar is doing. These numbers became repeatedly, or rather, these numbers became second to nature. And last year in September, my kids joined me here in Washington. So I moved into a 2-bedroom household. So instead of rebuilding the budget for the new season, I kept the budget in my head. I wasn't writing it down, neither did I adjust it. I just told myself, I know what my numbers are. My life had changed, but my budget had not. And when I became serious about my 7-year vision, I pulled 6 months of transactions. And I believe this is in the previous episode that I've done. So I pulled all transactions for the last 6 months, starting January all the way to June. And what the actuals that I saw surprised me. Some categories that were much higher than the amounts I had been carrying in my head. And some spending had been assigned, and some spending had never been assigned at all. A mental budget gives money an intention, but a written budget gives money an assignment. A mental budget, you know, the budget that you keep in your head, you already know how much you spend in food, electricity, insurance, all those assignments. It's an intention. You know, you have an intention of spending this money. This is how you plan to spend. But a written budget gives money an assignment. It gives money an assignment. And that is what we are going to learn today. At work, electricity normally enters the data center. So I work for a data center, and electricity comes in, and it is then, when electricity comes in, it is distributed to the different tenants, and we meter what is being distributed. So at the end of the month, There is the bill that comes from the electricity company. And we also look at the allocation, how much each tenant has consumed for the month. So we calculate all that to come up with a total consumption. We have the meters that tells us this is how much this tenant 1, tenant 2, tenant 3 has used. And so we compare it with the bill. So the bill that comes from the electricity company tells us you have used 1 million. But there is the actual that has been consumed by each tenant. The total may come up to 1,500,000. And so we compare these two numbers every single month so that if there is a difference that is outside the accepted range, we investigate. And in one of these activities in the month of June, it's actually made me think. I started to look at it from a different view. Why don't I start doing this with my finances? Do I actually compare the money that I have set aside to use during the month versus the money that actually leaves my bank? So there is the money that comes into your account. That's the income, disposable income that comes into your bank account. There is the budget which you have written down and you say, I'm going to use this amount, and it comes to a total of X. Then you compare with the actual amount that left your bank account. Does it, if you were to reconcile the two, what you have budgeted to spend versus what has actually left your bank account, do those two match? And if not, you have to reconcile so that you can investigate on the difference. And with what we do with our data center, as far as electricity distribution is concerned, is what made me start to analyze my finances and what is coming in, what I have budgeted, and what I have actually spent. And this brings us into today's topic, that before assignment comes priority. We looked at that last episode, the priority, when we were looking at the money blueprint and how I decide which dollar gets which assignment. My priorities have to tell me. So a paycheck is not simply money available to spend. It already has responsibilities waiting for it. So any money that is coming into your account, it should already be assigned a responsibility. So an assignment is not just a list of expenses. An assignment is a purpose given to your money. So we start with priority. What matters to me right now? Remember from the vision, we said after you decide what's the vision, then it comes priority. And in that priority, it also tells you what is on your ring. So in the vision, once you come up with a vision, this is what I want to do. For example, in my case, my vision is to retire in 7 years. And in that 7 years, in this season that I'm in, the priority that I gave myself was to be debt-free in the next 3 months. That is what matters to me right now. The priority now is to be debt-free in the next 3 months. So an assignment is what amount of money I am directing toward that priority. And then the budget is the complete plan showing all the assignments that I have for my money. So some dollars may have an assignment, paying for my house, paying for food, transportation, utilities, insurance, giving, savings, investing, enjoyment. My priorities determine my assignments. And so in my current season, debt freedom is what is priority for me. Essential assignments still get funded. Essential assignments still get funded, but I'm intentional redirecting more towards my debt. And that priority changes my behavior. I meal prep, I take food to work, I reduce eating out, and I spend less. And whatever I spend less in one category, that money does not become free for me to consume. I reassign it to the priority. I still give time and still put money aside for enjoyment as an assignment. So budgeting is not a punishment. It is intentional management. And I'm going to share with you here. Again, I love sharing. There we go. So here we see a mental budget versus a written budget. So mental budget, I know where my bills go. I know where my bills are. I know what my bills are. I know where my money goes to. So a mental budget lives in my head, and it is based on estimates and memory. And it is easy to miss changing costs. A mental budget gives money an intention. So when we compare that to a written budget, this is where each dollar knows what it's. A written budget shows this is where each dollar will do. You're writing down and assigning each dollar what it needs to do. So it is written before the month begins. It reflects current priorities and can be tracked and reconciled. And it gives money an assignment. A mental budget gives money an intention, and a written budget gives money an assignment. And in order for me to give every dollar an assignment, I am using the zero-based budget. The zero-based budget tells every dollar, it gives every dollar an assignment. And I'm going to use this as illustration. So it is not a reflection of my personal spending or income in one way or another. So the example here that the take-home income is 5,600. And so on one side, we have the fixed. And the fixed assignments, these are costs, or these are expenses that remain the same throughout the month. Sometimes it's year after year. And then the variable assignments, these are assignments that whereby the expenses change from one month to another. So from the fixed assignments or the core assignment, the housing, and the housing here includes water and sewer. So we have assigned it an amount of 1,900. Then we have the type. We are assigning it 10% of the take-home income, so it's 560. Then we have a phone. It is fixed at $60. The internet fixed at $70. Car insurance at $140. Life insurance at $20, and YouTube subscription $20. Then we have the variable assignments. The variable assignments may change. However, you give an amount, the maximum that you're planning to use. So the hair and personal care is $250. That's the maximum. So, and then Netflix subscription, that's $10. Actually, that's supposed to be under fixed asset. And then there is giving towards a course. I'm assigning it $100. Then there's electricity, a max of $180. So sometimes the variables may vary from one month to another. So for example, electricity in wintertime can go to $180. But in summertime, when it's not cold, maybe you could be paying electricity at $100. And then there's the transportation, a max of $200. So drinking water delivery is $80. The food, a maximum of $450. So there are some months that you will find that you are buying less food, either because the kids are not in the house and they're on vacation. For example, in my case, my kids are in North Carolina for vacation, for summer vacation. So it's just me, meaning I'm just feeding myself. So my food expenses will be lower than what my budget is, than what I have assigned the budget amount for. And of course, eating out $100. So if you take $5,600 and you subtract all the fixed assignments, the variable or lifestyle assignments amounts, the amount that is being left is, the leftover amount is 1,460. And this is what I'm saying. In order to have a zero-based budget, in order my money to be assigned 100% and I have zero at the end of the day, is that I'm putting that 1,460 into the debt payoff assignment. So this is how a zero-based budget works. You're basically giving every dollar an assignment so that at the end or at the bottom of your budget, you have zero unassigned. Does this mean that you're using all your money? Not really. You could have assigned some to go into saving, some to go into investing, some to go into emergency fund. But what you're doing, it is making sure that at the end of the day, that you have assigned every single dollar. You have given it an assignment. So in this case, I have put a pause on savings. I have put a pause on investment because my priority in this season is paying off debt. And that's why I'm putting the remaining amount that is not under fixed assignment or is not under variable assignment. So I'm putting it all to go to the debt payoff assignment. This is what we call a zero-based budget. Next, the bolts and nuts of the monthly budget. So this is how the budgeting cycle works. it's not a one-time event. It is an every month event. Remember, every month you're looking at the money you have budgeted versus what you have actually used, and you're to compare the two. So that if there are any differences, you investigate on the differences and then you adjust if there is an adjustment that is needed. So in this case, the budgeting is a cycle. It is not a one-time event. So number one, you're going to assign. So before the month begins, for example, we are in August. So for the month of September, before September begins, you use your priorities to decide what each dollar will do. There are those fixed priorities, and then there are the variable priorities. And then there is that priority that is because of the season that you're in. So at the beginning of the month, you assign every dollar that is coming into your account, you assign it with and you use your priority to decide where each dollar will go. Then the second thing you do is during the month, you want to watch what is actually leaving your account. I have checked to receive text messages from my bank. So whenever money leaves my bank or money comes into my bank account, I get a text. And it shows me how much has come in, it shows me how much has left. So that if their money leaves that is not assigned, or rather, if money leaves my account that I had not intended to do, for example, let's say it is a subscription that you want to cancel. You know those subscriptions that you pay for a year in advance, and then you decide I'll only pay it for this year, but next year I will not plan to have that subscription. So you may forget to cancel the subscription. And so when money leaves the account and you're able to see a text saying that, hey, a subscription in, for example, let's say DoorDash or Instacart subscription, you don't want to continue with Instacart in the next month, right? So, and probably you forgot to cancel. If you see that money leaving your account, you can easily call Instacart and say, hey, I want to cancel my subscription, and they refund you the money. So number two is tracking. You want to make sure that you're tracking every amount that is leaving your account. You have a way of tracking it, whether it is by email, that you receive an email from your bank showing how much has left your account, or whether it is a text, or whether it is every week you sit down, you go through your bank account to see what money has left. Then number three, it is Reconcile. This is done at the end of the month. So at the end of the month has ended. So you want to look at, okay, how much had I said that is going to be my income coming into my bank account? 5,600. And how much had I planned to use during the month? And then you look at that. You compare the actual that has left the bank account, and then you're comparing with what you had actually planned to use. You want to compare what you assigned with what you actually spent. So that if there is a difference between the assignment and the actual spent, then you tell yourself, what does this mean? Does this mean this will be an expense that will be occurring now and then? Or was this just a one-time expense? Or in my creating a budget for the month at the beginning of the month, I may have missed this one. And this is where it now takes us to number four, adjust. So for the next month, you look at what you have learned and you make the next budget better. So you look at, in this month of September, first of all, you plan ahead of time. In the month of September, you say, in September, I plan to use all 5,600. Then when you're tracking that during the month, and then at the end of the month, you sit down and say, I had planned to actually use 5,600, but it looks as if I ended up using more. So it's as if I pulled more money from my savings account in order to cover for the expenses, for the actual expenses that were beyond 5,600. So what does that mean? What is this information teaching me, or what is it telling me? It tells me to adjust, either adjust up if I overspend, because it's an overspending. That means it looks like I forgot maybe to budget or to assign some amount to a certain assignment or to a certain expense. So I need to adjust up. Instead of using 5,600, I am now going to be using 5,700. However, if you want to use 5,600, but you end up using 4,000, then that difference of 1,600, you can adjust. And in this adjustment, if your priority, like in my case, is paying off the debt, you can say, you know what, I will add the 1,600 that I did not utilize or I did not spend this month. I will push it to pay the debt. So adjustment is not a failure. It is a better information for next decision. It's giving you the data to make an informed decision for the next month. So your priorities determine your assignment. So different seasons will call for different assignment. There's, for example, the debt freedom. It is when you're in the debt freedom season, you're redirecting any extra cash towards debt. So my electricity, I have assigned it. Let's say I have assigned it, as we have seen, $180. If the bill comes to $100, that $80 that is extra cash, instead of consuming it by going out and buying lunch or buying a dress, I push it to the debt freedom because that's my priority in this season. Then there could be an emergency fund as your priority. It is building, emergency fund is building a cushion for the unexpected, And once, my plan is once the debt is taken care of, once I have paid off the debt, the next priority will be to create an emergency fund. Some of you could be, you're creating a home, or your season is calling for home and education. So where you're saving towards a near-term goal. There's retirement. That's my next season. So once the debt is paid, I will also plan for an emergency fund to put aside. And once that is also done, then the retirement. So any money that I will, after I assign my fixed assignment, after I assign my variable assignment and lifestyle assignment, then any money that is left over, I will assign more towards the long-term investing. So that at the end of the day, or at the bottom of my budget, I want to see zero. So before you create a budget, write down 3 top financial priorities for this season. If your paycheck arrived today, would every dollar know its assignment? So coming back. So budgets are not a copy and paste documents. Each month may be different. For example, in September, my little one goes back to school. And there'll be school fees to be paid. There will also be either uniform to be bought or back to school items to be bought. So September will be a higher spending type of month. So that will look different from the following month of October. So a debt payoff season will look different from a house saving season. And someone building an emergency fund has a different assignment from someone preparing for retirement. So different seasons will require different priorities, and in those different priorities, there will be different assignments. But the same steward principle, the principle remains the same. And today, I'm not asking you to create your entire budget. So before you assign a dollar, write down your top 3 financial priorities for this season. Then ask yourself, if my paycheck arrived today, would those priorities already be waiting for it? And the final reflection here is, if your paycheck arrived today, would every dollar know its assignment? So last week, we created a blueprint. This week, we have learned that priorities determine the assignments we give our money. In the next episode, we will now build a budget. I will have the different budgets that are available out there. I will choose about 3 or 4. And this is to show what budget answers what, so that at least every person can use whatever budget that aligns to their goals. So, and whatever budget approach fits your season. So thank you once again for joining me. Stewards, until next time, let's continue learning, applying, and becoming better stewards for what has been entrusted to us all. Toodles!